respect to how to best advocate for your clients, I don't think that women and men have different ways of advocating for their clients. I think women and men have different ways of interacting with the universe. And so as a woman, I bring to the table my experiences as a mom, as a daughter, as, sister, that men don't have. But I do think it sort of gets into a larger sociological issue about whether or not men and women really are men born more pugnacious, and do they crash their cars into the wall because they want to, and do girls pick flowers because they want to, or are we socialized into it? I don't mean to make light of it, but I do think the more that is written and the more you read about the different ways that women and men do anything, be a doctor, be an economist, be a lawyer, are rife with controversy. Different people, different women see things differently. I have found being a woman in many ways was a benefit to me, because when I went to law school at Michigan in the mid-'80s, only 30% of my class were women. So when they want diversity on something, I was a good student. I think I'm a good lawyer, but I also happen to have ovaries, and that's a nice thing. And so, I'm sorry. But, which I will use for any lawful purpose. If somebody wants an articulate person who happens to be a woman, put me in, coach. So I don't mean to make light of it. I brought up earlier, and then I'll stop joking, but there was an article in The Atlantic written by Lara Bazelon just this month, September 2018. And she writes about the differences, how to be a trial lawyer as a woman. And it has caused more ruckus in the women's community than I've seen, because she talks about things that have happened to all of us. Being called a young lady prosecutor in front of a jury by a judge who knows my parents and likes me, but is somewhat demeaning because he almost was patting me on the head when I'm trying to put somebody in jail. I think the world has changed. I think you have to be who you are. And for me to try to be a man, or try to be overly aggressive, or to try to be taller than I am, or to try to be, anything, it doesn't make me credible and genuine in front of a jury. And I think if you know your stuff, the most important thing is for the jury to trust you. And if a jury trusts you, you're 90% of the way there.
Thank you. Gabrielle, can you provide any ways that women can best advocate for their clients, and how your involvement and leadership in the section has possibly influenced your ability to advocate effectively?
Sure. So I guess, I would just react to what Melissa said a little bit, in that I feel like the conversation has shifted a little bit in the last 2-3 years, even from, talking about women leaning in and acting in certain ways. And, even when I was coming out of law school, there was literally a session on, what to wear in job interviews, what to wear, in the law firm and so forth, to be taken a certain way. And I feel like now there's much more of a trend towards be yourself, be comfortable, do what makes you act naturally, so you're not so preoccupied with being somebody that you're not. And I think that it's a welcome shift, and I think that there are some differences, at least that I've seen, between men and women, especially more junior men and women, where there seems to be a little bit less confidence from more junior women as opposed to more junior men. And then that seems to, there seems to be a moment that you hit where, you have the confidence as well. And so that's why I think, my advice earlier on value yourself is try to realize that, you are supposed to be there. You do have value. And it's not because you have to act like a man, and you can actually, be yourself. But in terms of how women can best advocate for their clients, a few things that I think most women, and again, all women are different, and I think that, I don't want to overgeneralize, but I think generally we are really good at seeing things more strategically. So for example, I at home am very good at planning our weekends and cramming in as many different activities and all 3 birthday parties and all, the different kids' activities and our social engagements and getting in work and doing all of those things. And if it were up to my husband, we would do one thing. That would be it. And I think that as women, we are really good at seeing bigger pictures, seeing opportunities to multitask, to cross-pollinate different things, to figure out ways to be more strategic. And I think that that can also serve us really well as advocates for our clients. And I've seen that a lot being in-house, that you're not just interpreting the law or being a technician. You have to think very broadly about your business. And in a lot of cases, for example, in the case of Verizon, we have multiple businesses. And so I have to think about, the balance about how this is going to affect not this business, not just this business where I've been asked this particular question, but how, what's the impact of the other businesses that we have? And what's the immediate impact? How do I communicate this to regulators that I might have to, present a certain position to, while also still advocating for, our company in the most effective way. And it's keeping, juggling all these different balls and thoughts and the different strategies and being strategic, I think is something that being a woman has actually been very beneficial, because this is something that I do all of the time. And being comfortable in doing that, I think, allows you to be a particularly effective advocate.
And Melanie, how can women best advocate for their clients?
Well, I was reflecting on this and listening to Melissa's comments. I think, we're pretty close to peers, and it's interesting. I think, I said earlier, I hope I don't get in trouble for things. We didn't tend to talk about these issues as much. Now we do, and I think that's terrific. It's hugely welcome, and it's hugely right. But I think, even today, an experience as a woman is different, as a woman lawyer versus a male lawyer. And I'm not saying it's bad or at worst. It's just different. I think back to when I had my first child. I was in my late 30s, and I was absolutely determined. I'd seen so many women, peers who were really capable and good, get derailed for various reasons. But a lot had to do in my perception of it at the time, which may well not have been correct. But that the moment that you're pregnant, you're perceived differently. Your commitment is perceived differently. So what I did, I think back on it and I shudder because it was ridiculous, but I hid the fact I was pregnant for as long as possible, which you can do the first one. So people just thought I was gaining weight, and I was so old, people figured I wasn't going to have kids. So I got away with that for like 5.5 months. And so my goal was be publicly pregnant for as short a time as possible and then come back to work after 4 weeks so that people realize that you're committed. I think nobody has to do those silly things anymore. And I hope that that's the case, that people don't, because that was just probably more in my head by then even, in being the early 2000s. But, by the time I became commissioner and I had my second, partly because I was commissioner and I had that kind of role of authority, or at least I assumed that role, which wasn't me, but was the role, I actually put pictures of my kids on my desk because it humanized me. And I actually think that, that's where we are now more, is that it does humanize you. Not that everyone has to have kids, but just so you don't have to be afraid of people knowing. I did, though, even at the time I was experiencing it, again, a little bit more like put me in, coach, whatever the terms, like just put me in. I like that. That's very much how I thought about it. And I just thought, there are advantages here. If I get up, and I was a trialer at the time, when I stood up, I sounded differently from everybody else in the courtroom. And so the audience was mine to lose, because I sounded different from the same voice they'd been hearing for the last however long, droning on. So I thought that was I felt it. It was tangible. I also felt with witnesses. It would depend on the witness, but you could take them down the garden path because you didn't seem nearly so threatening as that aggressive guy who just questioned them. You could be cutting their heart out and they didn't even realize you were coming at them. So there were ways that you could really capitalize on the fact that you were different, and I didn't feel any shame in doing it. You got opportunities to speak. It reminds me very funnily of an experience I had. Nadia Calvino, who was Deputy Director General in Europe and head of mergers, and she's gone on to greater even things and practically running the commission now. But she and I sat on a panel with Sheriff Posen a few years ago, and she just jumped down my throat when I said, because it's a very European view of feminism, that when I said, I'm sure I got opportunities to speak because I was a woman, and she's like, no, you earned those on your own merit. And I'm like, it's not that I didn't earn them. I'm not suggesting that, but I'm just being realistic. And I think that's been my sort of motto, is be realistic. take the good with the bad, because there's always going to be bad in everybody's experience in their career. So, I think you need to be yourself. Again, I think Melissa pointed to this. If you're not yourself, people will perceive that, and it will not be effective, whether it's a jury, whether it's a boardroom, wherever it is. You can't, just like a golf game, you can't hide who you are for 5 hours. That's why it's so effective as a business tool, because you reveal who you are. And if you don't approach it by being yourself and you try to be somebody else, I don't think it's effective advocacy. So I think, there's so much we could talk about, but I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for providing such good advice for advocating for your clients. I certainly appreciate and thank the stellar panel for participating today. And you can look for this podcast to be posted on the Section's website as well as on our YouTube channel. Thank you all for tuning in, and have a great day.